attempt to say I'm being Jesus and showing love, honey, you ain't doing nothing but making them worse sometimes. I mean, we don't want to do that, but is that not true? If you take a spoiled child and you make excuses for their behavior, are you helping the spoiled child? No. It just makes them more entitled. It makes them worse. Sometimes people like this, they're super unhealthy, extremely manipulative. And here's what just really just gets me. They will hit you where they know it hurts the most because they're being controlled by something evil. They will hit you where it hurts the most. And sometimes the more we show it hurts, it feeds the devil, which feeds their control. And we have a duty to be, I mean, I hate to say it, you got to be careful. Almost how you react to something that hurts. Sometimes in a situation, I've had, a message might be sent that you could interpret, and it could just, the devil could want to rile you up, or, oh, it hurts. Okay. What are they going to do with okay? Nothing. It takes away the ability to manipulate and control in the time. And that's hard. Because sometimes we just want to react, don't we? You know what I mean? You just want to just get back at the situation. And I saw this, and of course, I'm trying to be cautious. We've all seen things in our life. But one of the saddest things I've ever witnessed, and I'm being careful, I have seen people who divorce use children as ways to hurt the former spouse. It's sick. I'll just call it, it's sick. That's sick. Because the child is innocent. And I remember how horrible, as a much younger person, that was to witness. And it bothered me. It was just, you could feel the evil of it. And I don't think I was professing, I don't know if I was even professing to be a believer then. These toxic individuals will cause all kinds of divisions and conflicts in your life. They'll try to ruin the positive relationships you have because they can't stand seeing anything healthy sometimes. They like control, don't they? But they always manage. This is what makes me even madder. They're the victims. Well, if they're nurtured to be the victim, expect them to keep acting like one. If I say out of Christian love and Christian compassion, and all I do is nurture their victimization by feeling sorry for them or trying to offer this, expect them to continue to act like a what? Victim. And I've used this, but I remember my sweet mama, and she was loving. Brother Mark, would you say my mom was a loving person? Very loving. Looked like a typical grandma. Calm, easygoing, not high-strung. I got on her nerves. I loved her to death, and they said I ruined her. I did. She didn't have nobody in life. She'd been there for everybody else her whole life. She deserved to just be the priority at some point in her life. And I remember this loved one being the victim. And my mama said, not, oh, I know, I'm so sorry. Oh, yes. I mean, I hate that happened. Let's go back 10 years and talk about something. What's that going to do? Something happened 10 years ago. You can go back and change it. When my family member was trying to be the victim, my mama said, and I don't mean to rehash this and y'all get tired of hearing it. I apologize if it feels that way. But she said, that's what you say. Kind of nips the ability to play the victim, doesn't it? When somebody doesn't play into it. Because that's allowing toxicity, and that's hard, isn't it? But I think as a Christian, I have a duty to love the Lord, and I'm really not doing anybody favors if I allow that, or if I nurture or cause that. Because how can God work with them if their heart's not going to be tender? Because there's always an excuse made. They're going to have an excuse for their sins. I mean, it's just, I don't know, it's a vicious battle when you balance, whether that be friend or whatever. You know what? Sometimes God expects us to create boundaries to prove we love him more. Does it mean it will be easy? Hey, if somebody tells you it's easy, honey, I question their mental stability. Does it mean it won't hurt? Of course not. When we do our reasonable service, as we are instructed in Romans 12:1, what does it tell us that we will become? A sacrifice. Sacrifice entails giving up, surrendering. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And I believe in being fair. I believe God wants us to protect our relationship with him. I believe if someone or something proves to be toxic or unhealthy, he'll give us direction on how to navigate the situation, and we don't have to be ungodly. We don't have to go off the deep end. If we don't let him help us navigate it, then we can create a situation that becomes a bigger mess, say and do things we regret, won't we? But another aspect of toxicity that I thought, as I was doing this, I thought, well, I always try to be fair. I have to be honest with myself and ask myself this question. Do I add any poison to the situation? Because it's always easy to blame someone else for being the toxic person, isn't it? But do I add any poison? Proverbs 26:17, he that passeth by and meddleth with strife belonging not to him is like one that taketh a dog by the ears. There have been times in life when we may have made situations more challenging because we just couldn't keep our hands, and unfortunately, my mouth, out of the circumstance. And I know what? I know this. I won't keep getting burnt if I keep my hand out of the pot. If I'm whining and complaining and upset that, I'm mad about this or I'm mad about that, I'm trying to be as fair as I can to situations. Am I keep putting my hand in the pot? If so, don't complain because I got burned. I need to have a boundary and a respect. It's easy to blame someone else for being a stress in my life. But I have to make sure that I'm not creating some of that stress or that chaos or whatever it is by overly involving myself, like that picture could represent. That maybe, just maybe, I have to leave some situations alone. And if I can read these very quickly. In 1 Thessalonians 4:11, and that ye study to be quiet and to, I love these words, do your own business and to work with your own hands as we commanded you. In 1 Peter 4:15, but let none of you suffer as a murderer, as a thief, or as an evildoer, or as a busybody in other men's matters. In 2 Thessalonians 3:11 and 12, for we hear that there are some which walk among you disorderly, working not at all, but are busybodies. Now them that are such we command and exhort by our Lord Jesus, that with quietness they work and eat their own bread. Sometimes busy yourself with your own business, and sometimes that's enough to keep up with, isn't it? Proverbs 20:3, it is an honor for a man to cease from strife, but every fool will be meddling. In an attempt to say, and sometimes I could convince myself, well, I'm doing this out of love, and all I've done is make it worse. I got burnt, stuck my hand in the pot again. Keep it out, Danny. In 1 Timothy 5:13, and withal they learn to be idle, wandering about from house to house, and not only idle, but tattlers, also in busy bodies, speaking things which they ought not. Keeping myself, as my mama would have said, well, that's what you say. My mom taught me something, and I guess I inherited it a little bit, but I just remember she did not like busybodies. That spirit of nosiness, she could not stand it. She was not someone, that just drove her batty. That she wouldn't say anything ugly or try to ever be critical or whatever of someone else's, let's say children, because that's where often what people get hurt, right, with a loved one. And then someone might come up and say something about one of hers, and it just frustrated her. She's like, I don't say anything about theirs. Why would they even come up and say that to me? Because people will meddle. It's just pathetic. If I'm inviting toxicity into my life by allowing people to tell me things that I really don't need to know, by putting in my 2 cents when I really need to tell someone, well, I will pray this works out for you, or by overly involving myself with someone else's troubles while telling myself that I'm just expressing concern. No, I may be putting my hand in the pot, causing myself to get burnt. I'm being a busybody. And now their life stresses, because this happens. Do you ever just hear something? Does anybody's stress ever spill off on you? Especially if you're you're called an empath. You feel deeply for other people. Well, you got to learn how to navigate that by God's help, or you're just miserable, right? I would say my wife gets tickled. There was a scenario as she and I and another couple, brother and sister. Well, that brother was very sentimental. Shut up, Ron. And I'm a mush pot too. If when a sister makes a prayer out of love and I feel that comes from a mama's heart, oh, that touches me. And I'm obviously not a mama. I don't have to have experienced it to feel for you. I can look at a kid, and if they look pitiful or sweet to me, it can break my heart, and I just want to go up and hug them. I can't help it. So there's my wife and me, the other brother and his wife. And he started talking about something he saw once. Now, it was some little silly child's thing, or you would associate as a child's movie or something. It was a book, and then they turned it into a film. And in that book, it made Rhonda get so tickled when I talk about it. He started talking about how in that book, that made him think of how Jesus, and here he's talking about this, and it has silly kind of names in the book, doesn't it, Rhonda? And he's being serious. And he's talking about how that reminded him of how Jesus gives us all of this. Well, he tears up. What did I do? And our wife started just a laughing. I was not being mean. It struck them so funny. There's two grown men. I kind of got touched because he was, and he's just teared up. And we still laugh about that. But when you can feel easily for others, it can be a blessing. But it also has to be something that comes with balance. Or I can't take on everybody's troubles, right? Sometimes that's where boundaries become the most healthy. Because you can take on, if not careful, everyone else's life stresses. And your healthy relationships now are affected, possibly, if we're not careful. I have to get my hand out of the pot of confusion, and I won't keep getting burned. God doesn't want that for me, does he? And I love this verse. It reminds me, what are his thoughts of me? Peace. The devil doesn't like it, so he'll do anything to disrupt it, and I can cause the disruption just as much myself, can't I? I'm just being fair. Danny has to be careful. In Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. So I pray that we all nurture that healthy relationship with the Lord, and he can sure help us now.
That's really good. Devil sure is slick, and he's got so many tricks. Brother Danny gave the example of a personal example. Well, we can the devil's still working for the same goal and toward all of us. So he's got something up his sleeve right now against every one of us. But the Lord will help us. That's really good. I appreciate the good lesson. All right, we'll take a little bit of a break, and then we'll move on with the service shortly, Lord willing.